All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of Dean Gary Jenkins in the Law School's Office of Advancement, especially my partner in organizing today's webinar, Lizzie Bigelli, we welcome you to another international CLE offering from the University of Minnesota Law School. As part of the Spring Alumni Week 2023 activities, today's special CLE topic will address global insights and perspectives in working as in-house corporate counsel. We are thrilled to have a worldwide panel and audience representative of our very global law school population of students and alumni. Moderator Kiri Sommermeyer, Executive Director of the Law School's Corporate Institute, will serve as moderator today. Kiri, Lizzie, and I are joining you today from a very warm Minnesota, where snow is melting rapidly. And our panelists, whom I will introduce shortly, are zooming in from Sweden, Japan, China, and South Korea. For the requisite housekeeping notes, today's webinar is being recorded and the link to the recording will be shared via email following the event. We have live audio captioning enabled. Please click on the live transcript feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to view or hide these captions throughout today's discussion. We will do our best to reserve time at the end to pose questions submitted by the Q&A feature found at the bottom of the screen. With that, let's meet the stars of our show. First, our faculty moderator. Kiri Sommermeyer is the Executive Director of the Corporate Institute, where she teaches the Business Law Clinic and oversees the Corporate Externship Program and independent field placements affiliated with the law school's experiential education program. She also leads and supports other efforts of the Corporate Institute, including bringing speakers and events to the law school that focus on business law. Prior to joining the law school in 2022, Kiri was Associate General Counsel at Post Consumer Brands, headquartered here in the Twin Cities. For our panelists, start with Cassie Fortin at the Volvo Group in Gothenburg, Sweden. Cassie serves as legal counsel for the Volvo Group Truck Purchasing, Legal, and Compliance Group. In her role, she focuses on electromobility and works cross-functionally with other legal counsels and businesses within Volvo. Before joining Volvo, Cassie worked in several law firms across Minneapolis, focusing on complex products, liability litigation, and business law. She is a 2008 graduate of the law school. Next, Dan Potts with the SoftBank Group in Tokyo. Dan serves as group head of dispute management with SoftBank in Tokyo, where he leads a global group with oversight over litigation, dispute resolution, and regulatory matters. Prior to his current role, Dan provided legal counsel focusing on overseas investments with SoftBank. Before moving there, Dan worked as a foreign attorney in Tokyo for over 11 years and in Seattle-based law firms. He is a 2002 graduate of the law school. And next, Vicki Kim with Lamb Research in the Seoul metropolitan area. At Lamb for approximately a year now, Vicki serves as in a corporate counsel role. Prior to her current position, she served as legal counsel for multiple companies in South Korea, including SK Hynix, Samsung Display, Hanwha Q-Cells, and Advanced Materials. She is a 2016 graduate. And last but not least, Echo Wong with NYU Shanghai in China. Echo serves as Associate General Counsel with NYU Shanghai, where she has served for over 6 years. Prior to joining NYU Shanghai, she worked with a U.S. higher ed company as head of legal and compliance, and at a Fortune 500 manufacturing company and other roles. Prior to joining in-house, Echo worked with Kodak Brothers, now Oric, and Weil Gotshal, respectively, as well as a district court in Shanghai as an assistant judge. Echo received her Master's of Law from the University of Minnesota Law School in 2003. To our panelists, again, welcome and thank you so much for your time and insights today. With that, Kiri, please take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I like the different time zones. I think it adds different energy to a panel. So I'd like to start with just talking about everyone's current position at your companies, and if your role has changed over time, how has your role evolved? So I think we'll start out this first time going in order that Tim introduced everyone. So Cassie, if we could start with you.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here. As they said in my intro, my role is within Volvo Group Truck Purchasing, or GTP. You'll learn that once in-house, everything becomes an acronym. So I'm heavily involved in the purchasing of all of our automotive products and indirect products and services. So a lot of people think Volvo and they think Volvo Cars, which is true, but I don't work at Volvo Cars. I work at Volvo Group, which includes trucks, buses, marine engines, and construction equipment. So I am responsible for the all of the purchasing agreements and that we have with our suppliers, our joint joint partners that we have, and it involves I'll just sort of end there as just a general involved in contracts. So
that's perfect. All right, Dan.
Yes, I'm Dan Potts. It's nice to be here and nice to participate in this. It's good to see everyone. I'm with SoftBank Group in Tokyo. And if you've heard of SoftBank outside Japan, you probably think of them as mainly an investment company that they make investments around the world in startups and technology and things of that nature. If you're within Japan, you think of it as one of the major wireless mobile providers. So it's mainly a cell phone company in Japan. And that's true for both of us. I'm with the group, SoftBank Group, and we're the holding company. So basically the mobile company and all the investment arms they all fall under us. So we tend to oversee that. We don't necessarily exert control over them, but it's somewhat of a complex relationship. But I guess the way I came into my role, my own department is a little bit unique because we have so much business all over the world. We have lawyers that come from all over the world, and we have lawyers from New Zealand, Australia, the UK, Ireland, and then there's me from the US. And of course, we also have several Japanese lawyers too. And part of how I came into that role is that I'm really the only US lawyer on my team. So in a lot of ways, I ended up becoming kind of the spokesman for US law, or the spokesperson, and which is a little bit daunting in some ways, but it's interesting too. So a lot of the roles that I've taken on now have come because I received a question in that area and I had to look into it, and it turned into something else. And so by the time it did become something else, I ended up being the one who takes that over. So it's an interesting job. I guess we'll get into a little bit about how we spend our day, but it's something new every day. So glad to be here and look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, Vicki.
Hi, currently I'm working as part of the Global Legal Services Department at Lam Research, which is a manufacturing company that supplies semiconductor equipment and related services. Prior to this position, I've worked at different Korean companies, including SK Hynix, Samsung Display, Hana Qcells, where they're all manufacturing companies, and I was engaged in dispute resolution, mergers and acquisition, and just general corporate transaction matters. I would say that my responsibilities evolved in a way where it's somewhat broadened and also narrowed at the same time compared to my past positions. Currently, it's more focused in a way that I'm involved in just general corporate transaction matters only, but it also expanded where I am dealing with more different types of issues and contracts in the role that I am at. I think one of the reasons why this differences exist is because I work with my manager, and we are responsible for 4 different entities located in Korea. And we are part of a bigger legal department, which consists about more than 70 or plus lawyers and paralegals. Previously, where I was working in the Korean companies, it was a smaller group of lawyers, maybe ranging about 10 at most. So I guess the different organization structure and being part of whether I'm located in headquarter or a local entity as a branch, makes a difference in the responsibilities I have here.
Perfect, thank you. And Echo.
Hi, nice to be here. And I'm Echo Wang. I'm from China. Currently, I'm the Associate General Counsel of NYU Shanghai. So the NYU Shanghai is also the degree granting campus of NYU globally. So being the most senior people of a legal team in China, I need to take care of the legal affairs involving the whole school operation. So ranging from drafting and reviewing contracts and formulation and amendment the school policies, HR and the dispute matters, IP, and to advising on various legal issues. So basically almost, pretty much everything. So meanwhile, I'm also the supervisor of the school education foundation. My experience is relatively unique. My first in-house job was with 3M, and I was in charge of the legal matters of the industrial and the transportation business group. So the biggest business group of 3M China. Then I worked with McDonald's China mainly on franchise projects. Afterwards, I was the head of legal and compliance with Laureate Education Group in China. Laureate indirectly controlled a private university with nearly 13,000 students in China. So during them, I basically oversee all the legal affairs and the compliance matters involving the private university. So nowadays, I have worked with NYU Shanghai for more than 6 years.
Okay, I think Echo froze up there. But we'll keep moving. Thank you, and we can come back and hear more if we get a better connection. Let's jump into the next question. Excelling in-house requires more than being a good lawyer. And one of the things we want to focus on in this panel is what are the unique skills essential to thriving as a corporate counsel? So I'm wondering what that means to you. How does going beyond being a good lawyer play a role in your position? Let's start with Dan.
That's a good question. I feel like a lot of it has to do with really establishing the interpersonal relationships with the people I work with. And you know, when I was at a law firm, I mean, you get a project, you have clients, and you know, you help them out. In this case, I feel like I'm more part of a team, and then we're one aspect of that team. And in part of that, I mean, you really have to understand the business and all the stakeholders and all the different groups and departments that you're working with so you know what their goals are and what their aims are, and then you can provide the legal support and advice to really kind of help them out and to make sure that what you're advising them on is really what they really need. And I feel like that the other thing I also in thinking about this is that and going back to the interpersonal relationships, you know, I mean, these are your coworkers, you know, people in all these other departments are your coworkers. And so, you know, I guess if you're at a law firm and the attorney-client relationship breaks down, I mean, you know, there are ways to end it, but these are people you work with every day. So, you know, you really have to be able to establish that rapport with them and really get them to trust you, so that, you know, when there are times where you do have to deliver the bad news, they know that they can trust you with that, and that what you're saying is you're doing it for the best interest of the company. That was just kind of my initial thought on that.
Yeah, I like that. Does anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I would just say I completely agree with that. Fostering relationships is critical. I think, I mean, critical, but also for me, I just enjoy it because I'm a very extroverted person, which by no means do you have to be an extroverted person to be in-house counsel. But I guess I like the fostering relationships because it really when you do that, then they feel comfortable from a business perspective coming to you with questions, and that's really what you want. You want to create an environment where you know, they're going to come to you with questions that, you know, even if they're silly, or even if they're totally off mark, but you want them to come to you because maybe they're not off the mark, or maybe there is something really critical. And if you sort of create that open dialogue where Cassie's the person to go to if you have a question, and sometimes I find in-house, those fostering the relationships, you sort of become, even if I don't know the answer, well, Cassie will know, because as lawyers, we solve problems no matter if it's legal. And I think that is, you know, I've done that in my own practice within the e-mobility space, because we have a lot of buyers that I support, a lot of the buyers, and a lot of them are new to the area. So they don't necessarily have as much background in all of the products or whatnot. And so for myself, kind of creating an open area where it's like, hey, I have office hours, or if you have questions, please come with me. That might mean going into the office. I know like COVID has changed that, but you know, going into the office and just finding out that someone, oh, they bike into work. Oh, I just got a new gravel bike. Now you have something to talk about where it's, you know, you're building relationships outside the context of work, and then so that builds trust, and that trust will help you down the way. So I would echo foster relationships, like Dan said.
It's great.
Yeah,
Echo, sorry. Oh, go ahead, Vicky.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna add on to fostering relationship. It's on the same line, I guess, but approachability is an important point. You want to be approachable to your internal clients or your colleagues, because this would really not only foster relationship, but you want them to be not afraid of you to come up with questions, whether it be silly or, you know, a simple questions, but you want them to come to you, be more forthcoming, and also to communicate any issues that might be bad or negative. You want to know in advance. So being more approachable and accessible to your internal clients is very important. And I think this way you would not only like identify issues that you would not otherwise get or be obvious to you, and also you can address them in a more effective way by cooperating with them for getting more information about it. And also, I guess, establishing this approachability, you can do it by doing simple things like Cassie said, you want to be present in the office so that the internal clients know that you're there. They could come by and just visit you and talk to you in person, because sometimes they're more hesitant to write things in emails. They want to just ask, you know, casually of how this is going. Or if you are having lunch or just mingling with them, you would sometimes just pick up new issues during that informal conversations that you are having with your colleagues, or just making yourself available as a resource or as a bridge to connect with other departments. And this way, I think you not only benefit as an in-house counsel, but also I think the company in whole kind of benefits from getting more issues to the legal department.
And Echo, I know we lost you for a minute there. So the question is, excelling in-house requires more than being a good lawyer. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, to me, I agree with the team's communication skills and also the interpersonal skills are very important. So I think the communication skills are important for private practice also, but more crucial for in-house counsels. So internal clients are from the different departments with different backgrounds, so they have different business aims or goals. So more important, they are not lawyers. So it's not just when we provide legal advice. So it's not just about legal advice itself, rather, so the clear understanding and the implementation of legal opinions by commercial colleagues play an essential role. So business needs to understand the risk around an agreement or legal advice and the exposure for the organization. And also, I think know the industry that your entity operates in, and the people like the team mentioned just now is the key. So you'd better to being an in-house counsel, you'd better to keep up to date with the business trends, the best practice, and how your advice can help your clients achieve their goals. Sometimes the law itself is a bit ambiguous and you need to clarify the requirements practically. So yeah, don't hesitate to talk to people and ask questions. For NYU Shanghai, when I revised admission requirements for international applicants with Chinese heritage, so the relevant nationality law and the Ministry of Education rules are not 100% clear. So to provide better guidance, I also refer to other schools' relevant practice so as to frame the wording to better define the qualification of such applicants. So which is, to me, I think which is very helpful and also useful for the in-house counsels. Yeah.
And a quick follow-up question there. What are your best tips, any of you, Echo or others, for learning the business, learning the industry, keeping up to date on what's relevant for your client?
For my clients, I think I had a WeChat group, so the instant message app in China. So we have consisting of more than 100 legal personnel from more than 100 universities. And also like for each year prior to the pandemic, I joined like the annual meeting of the National Association of Universities and College Attorneys in the States. So hopefully,
Sure. Does anyone else want to jump in with any tips?
This is Cassie. I think she was maybe mentioning various different organizations that are industry organizations to be a part of. I think that that's a really good idea. To be involved in that. Also, just, you know, so even though my main focus is the contracts, I, you know, really want to understand what is it that we're buying and selling. And so, you know, they might have a portfolio of information that the buyer has that they bring to their manager. Really, even myself looking at that and understanding what the product is, understanding what this, you know, the IPR strategy that we have with a particular part, just asking more and more questions so that you understand what they're doing and so that you can anticipate things down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, and I mean, at least with SoftBank, I mean, they're involved in so many different things. I mean, one of the things I did was I tried to meet as many people as I could just to find out what they did, and if there was a department that I wasn't quite sure of, you know, I'd go and talk to them and see what they did, and then so that later on when a question comes from them, then it's you understand exactly where they're coming from, and so that's just trying to get to know people and establish that relationship. It also helps too, and this is just kind of adding to what I earlier mentioned. You know, sometimes a legal department will need each department. You know, we might have maybe like an antitrust filing or something which requires information from various places, and so you need their cooperation too. So it's not just we serve them, they, you know, they help us a lot too, and help us get done what we need to get done.
So I think that's a good segue to my favorite question for in-house lawyers, which is what does a typical day look like for you? What do you do? What is your job? So we know, you know, sort of your department, and Dan, you said every day is different, but can you give us just an idea of what from the start of the day to the end of the day, what you might be working on, what sort of unique issues might come up? And Vicky, let's go ahead and start with you.
Sure. I guess the daily work, I start with getting a lot of calls, seeing a lot of emails with legal inquiries and just consultations. And we have a separate system for the contracts, so we would have a lot of contracts sent through that and be answering all that issues. And this is ranging from all sort of different kinds, especially because I am responsible for different entities in Korea. It would be anything that you would deal with as part of the supplier of a manufacturing company. And for example, it would be termination notices to the other side for, a termination of the contract, any legal document or contracts that would be associated with the business you'd be reviewing. For legal consultations, you would get a lot of different questions, whether it be privacy policy issues or, sometimes it would be IP issues, and you would want to collaborate with your IP lawyers within the department, or it would be sometimes HR issues or employment and labor related questions. So there are broad range of questions that would happen within the organization. And as Dan and Cassie and Echo have mentioned before, you would have to really work with the interdepartments within the organization and get that answer for them when it comes to legal consultations. And I guess one other part that I do is also working with the outside counsels. You're kind of a liaison, but at the same time, you have your unique place where the context of the issue as an in-house, and you want to communicate in a more efficient and effective way to the outside counsels, so that they could deliver certain opinions for you and you can collaborate with them. So yeah.
Echo, do you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about what a typical day looks like for you?
Yes, sure. So on my average day of work, I start the day off by checking emails, and I try to get back to my colleagues the sooner the better. When the inquiries are very simple, not very simple, relatively simple and easy to address. Then I will focus on the complex work or top priority matters on my list. I would like to deal with such matters in the morning when I was more energetic. So recently, we are mainly working on the update of the employee menu and the template employment agreements, as well as preparing for filing the address change with authority, because recently we just moved to a new campus. So in the afternoon, I tend to supervise the junior people's work, provide feedback, or attend meetings or talk to people about outstanding matters. The legal issues are very diversified and depend on the school operation. So pretty much everything from contract, IP, data protection, so negotiation of compensation for personal damages, and the June's use policies or sponsor research policy, and faculty member benefits or like donation related matters. So just to name a few. So for the past few years, I spent most time in tackling the problem arising out of pandemic and the construction of new campus. So during the pandemic period, we started a local program in Shanghai to provide the study site for students who are unable to go to the States. So accordingly, we need to recruit contract faculties, negotiated the lease agreement with the landlord, in particular to turn the office area to be a study site suitable for our school operation, and the time is very tight. And for this February, we just moved to the new campus. So basically the main legal issues I worked with was ensure the completion of the construction and also the smooth transition from the old buildings to the new campus. So accordingly, need to take care of the campus design agreement, various construction issues, in particular like the lab, IT center, and the cafeteria. So as well as the close associate operation in old campus. So basically, that's my typical days these days.
Cassie, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I'll do a little bit more, not a typical day, but kind of a typical week, because I think there are I kind of do the same thing that everybody else has sort of said.
Sure.
I think some of the things that I was a bit surprised about that I end up spending a lot of time on is on different management team meetings. And the reason that I mention that is because that can be anywhere up to 2 to 4 or 5 hours a week. And so I think that that's important to realize, because it's not something that I necessarily thought of before I was in-house. And those are really great opportunities to learn about the business and to learn about the other key players. So I'd say a significant point of that, my week is spent on strategic management meetings, daily, just answering various questions related to the contracts that we have with our suppliers. We try to have our agreements, our framework agreements and our price agreements set up so that for typical questions, the buyers are given the autonomy to answer them themselves, and we kind of create some sort of chart. So if this, then this, and if there's something out of the ordinary, then they can come to us. So answering some of those out of the ordinary questions, or I think everyone probably has spent an extended period of time on say a larger project, so that I think it was a prior project I had, it was over the course of maybe like 8 months, every Friday for like 3 or 4 hours, we were meeting with, the not opposing counsel, but it was for a joint venture. So we were meeting with our competitor, but also our joint venture. And then, just within that, there's just so much a richness of legal issues, IP, you have antitrust, you have, oh, do we have enough insurance? So the gamut really of the questions that you can have. So, in addition to some of the negotiations that you have, and also just, one-on-one meetings with your manager to kind of get them up to speed on what are some of we say hot topics, and then we have our own team meeting. My team consists of about 11 lawyers that are in the US, France, China, and Sweden. And so we have bi-weekly meetings where we talk about any issues that we have, or just things that people should be aware of.
Yeah, I guess my typical day it is a little bit it sounds pretty similar to what has already been said. A lot of time our team has to deal with people in different time zones. So one thing that happens is that usually in the morning, I usually get the emails from that come in overnight, usually from the US, either outside counsel or our US team. We have a US team too. So I deal with those. And then if we have meetings with the US or calls with them, then those usually happen in the early morning. So by the time we get through all that, then the people, the other departments that have gotten their overnight emails start coming to us. So then I start dealing with the Japan side. And it's also during this time that we also set up our internal meetings with my Japan colleagues. And then, like Cassie said, we also have weekly updates with our different teams. I guess they are mostly weekly updates, although there's a few which are twice a week. But so once we, and then if anybody wants to set up a meeting, then, we do that during the day. So then toward the end of the day, then the UK team starts to come online. So I start getting, probably around 5 o'clock, I start getting another rash of emails from them. And sometimes they want to set up calls too, so we do that. So in the late afternoon and early evening, I usually deal with the UK, unless it's something that could hopefully wait until the next day. But in a lot of ways, my day is dictated by which time zone I'm dealing with at the time. So anyway.
And in addition to the time zone issues, which I imagine all of you deal with, what are some other unique aspects of working for a global company? And maybe, I don't know if you've worked for other, more national companies, but just curious if there are other things that stand out that make your positions unique in that way.
I guess I'll start. I think apart from the different time zones, all jurisdictions have different governing law, or they would be working also, whether it be common law jurisdiction or a civil law jurisdiction. Also, they have different working culture in different countries. Some people view legal as more, a risk manager where they can cooperate and work with, while as some would think more of an audit or a compliance function. So you would have to really understand, I guess, the cross-cultural differences of each region. And because I also work as part of a bigger APAC group and also with the other lawyers worldwide, you really need to understand how the organization functions within that differences of culture, because I guess you would want to tailor your communication styles a little differently when you're talking to different regions. I realized that maybe, for example, in Korea, some people prefer that when we're reporting things, they want it reported in person orally rather than having it via email, whereas it's more convenient or typical for sending an email report to the US or other countries. So I guess you need to be mindful of the cross-cultural differences between the region and the jurisdiction and incorporate that into your day-to-day operation.
Something you don't learn in law school.
I mean, Vicky hit on a point that about the cross-cultural, being mindful of that in different laws. I mean, one of the things that, at least in that I've come across is like, for example, the attorney-client privilege. As we know it in the US, in Japan, it does not exist like that. I mean, your conversation doesn't mean it's necessarily public. I mean, there's privacy and confidentiality just because of the interaction between the lawyer and the client, but the attorney-client privilege doesn't really exist in Japan. And I know, and I would certainly defer to Cassie on this one, but I know in Europe for in-house counsel, it's different than what we would think of in the US. So, when you are talking to somebody else, you do have to think about the implications of what you're saying, depending on where they are.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, or however the saying goes. Is in Sweden, that's the same thing. If you are an in-house counsel, you don't have the privilege of attorney-client privilege. But if I hire an outside counsel for something, that can become privilege. So that's a little bit, coming from law firms in the US, a little bit takes a little bit something getting used to. But I think that the cross-cultural piece is really key. And for me, there in Sweden, there's this idea of fika, which is it's basically like a coffee break, but it really is a part of the culture. And taking those breaks is not just it's a part of getting to know your coworkers, but it's also realizing that people from a cultural standpoint, they're going to take those breaks, and if you don't, you're not working through lunch or working. It's not viewed as she's really great, that it's almost the exact opposite. And I think that the idea of having lunch with your coworkers and other team members is something that was very unique to me, coming from law firms where I sat at my desk and and quick ate. And it's a pleasant difference, I think.
That makes me think about your transition. So I think most of you have had some experience working at law firms. What did this shift feel like? Cassie, that's a great example, but what other ways did that shift to in-house practice impact your work?
I mean, I think being in Sweden and Scandinavia, it's a different culture from the US, and I'm sure from all the other people on the panel. But there really was, to a certain extent, a built-in work-life balance. And I say a built-in because, for example, you are legally required to have a minimum of 3 in a row weeks off in the summer, and you take it. And that was just mind-boggling to me. I'd never had that much vacation off at once in my entire life. And you know, I think from even just in Europe, that's just something that's very common. You know that in, you know, the middle of July to August, Sweden will be on break. You know, our French colleagues will be on break in August, and that was a little challenging getting used to at first, because, you know, the world doesn't stop, but it kind of does in certain parts. And then you have to recognize that you're going to have a lot of work right before those time periods, and you know, leading up to that, and you have to sort of you know, work with that. So that's one. I'll let some other people give some examples, so, you know, it's a little bit variety.
To me, I think the shift is relatively smooth, but still difficult. So my first in-house work is with 3M. So before that, I worked with Mango's LLP, so a US law firm. So except for the fancy office, the gap between the private practice and in-house is big. So previously, I have strong admin support and have my own legal secretary. So being an in-house counsel, I don't have that strong admin support. And also, like, the in-house counsel needs to pay attention to the implementation of the law. So it's also different. So previously, I mainly worked on the project. So now it's routine legal affairs involving daily business operation. So for me, so I had to say that the challenge is how to work with business constructively. So maintaining the good balance of the business risk and the legal risk, so as to get things done properly. Sometimes it's difficult to do so. So in particular, like in the early stage of the in-house counsel role, because for the newcomers, we didn't know the industry very well, and we didn't know the people very well. So either, so it's kind of like the challenge, and also it needs to shoulder some risk sometime. So I realized in my early stage, I tend to avoid as many risks as possible. But nowadays, I think being a legal counsel needs to be more flexible and needs to be the problem solver. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just add on that, when you said some of the administrative things, I had to laugh, because when I first started at Volvo, you know, we no longer bring in money, we cost money. So you know, I didn't have Internet Explorer on my computer for a while, and I had to like figure out how this set up, and there was no admin, and you know, you're used to being able to call the IT and then they fix it right away, and you know, things happen just like that, and you realize that that things like that, you know, don't happen. You have to do your own billing and your own receipts. Yeah, that.
I personally haven't worked at a law firm. I started off as an in-house, so I don't have that experience to compare it. But I guess one of the difference is that, you know, in law firms, clients come to you for help, seeking for help. Whereas I think internal clients within a company, you kind of need to go to them. You need to be more proactive than reactive. You also have to be, you can't just be a person who says, no, this is risky, or you kind of need to be a business partner where you come up with solutions and let them know, you know, despite of this risk that is associated with this issue, this is an option, or this is an alternative, rather than just saying, you know, this is risky, you know, and you shouldn't do it, kind of thing. So I guess that might be a little bit different with the law firm and in-house.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. The one thing I would add is that I feel like I'm much more of a generalist than I was in a law firm. In a law firm, you're put in a certain department. You might work in a certain practice area. In-house, you know, since I'm the U.S. lawyer, you know, if it's a U.S. law question, well, you ask the U.S. lawyer, and it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, so if it's a litigation question or securities regulation question, well, they'll ask me and I have to try to figure it out. So I feel like that you can't be too specific about which areas you focus on. It's very general.
I also think what Vicky was saying in terms of learning that you need to be, you can't just say no, or you can't just say this is what you need to do. And that was sort of, when you're at a firm, that's what they're looking for. What's the right way about going things? And I think one of the harder lessons that I had to learn very quickly was that just because I think the business should go a particular way doesn't mean that that's the way they're going to do it. So when they don't, I need to be able to tell them, okay, well, this is what you could do. This is what you should do. This is what I think you should do. And here are all the consequences of all of those things. So if they decide to do something that I don't necessarily think is as from a legal perspective as good of idea, maybe they're willing to take it from a business risk, then I have to identify what are the legal risks and business risks for them. So yeah, so just because just because something isn't a good idea doesn't mean the business won't do it. And you have to be creative in how you can resolve those issues.
So I do want to encourage people to ask questions in the chat at this point. If you have an overarching question, that's fine. Or if you have a specific question for an individual panelist, please go ahead and submit any questions. And while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and ask another question so we can keep chatting. Cassie, your comment about being in management meetings and leadership meetings made me think about how corporate legal counsel can contribute to achieving broader company goals. So how you mentioned being a cost center, but I'm curious, how does the legal function deliver value to the actual business operations?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we are a cost center in a certain sense of the way, but we also, instances of, doing XYZ and then saving lots of money. So there are, it goes both ways. But sorry, can you repeat what I lost my train of thought.
For anyone, please jump in. How does your legal function deliver value to the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think, knowing what the business is, knowing what we can get ahead of, if we use just COVID even for an example, or we had this huge influx of force majeure letters. Like that was just a clause that no one ever knew. It didn't exist. No one ever said force majeure. And sort of setting up adding that value to your business, because that's going to come, and we set up just draft letters that we can use to respond to them, and it's in an efficient manner, and letting protecting our assets. So that's one example of a value that you can add in a time of crisis.
Yeah. We did
Just to jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Vicky. I'll let you answer and then I'll throw in the question. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, with respect to the cost center part, I guess we could also save money in a way. For example, if we communicate efficiently and effectively with the outside counsels, we'll minimize the outside counsel's fee. Or sometimes if we have, like, for example, a product liability case and we need to pay damages, we would, as lawyers, we would look at the agreements, if there's any room that we can minimize, or whether there was mitigation efforts that was done, and so on. So we would look into all the documents and the relevant contracts and provide solutions, and also put that into a settlement agreement writing where, if we cut the cost of what we need to pay as damages, that's also adding value. So I guess there are a lot of ways where we can kind of minimize the capex of the company.
Yeah, thank you. So I love the question because it's perfect for Alumni Week. How all of you went to the University of Minnesota Law School. How did you transition from Minnesota law to an in-house counsel position for an international business? Dan, you're laughing. How about we start with you?
It's a good question. Yeah, somewhat by accident. I guess I ended up, I went into, first I was a clerk at an appeals court in Washington State, and then I went to a law firm. I had connections to Japan. My mother was from here, and my wife's from here too. And so that's how I ended up with ended up at a Japanese law firm. As a foreign lawyer at a Japanese law firm, it's not quite the same as if you're at a U.S. law firm where you start as associate and the goal is to make partner. Those opportunities exist for foreign lawyers, but they're few and far between. So really, in terms of having more of a career track, in-house was really the best option for me in Japan. So that's kind of how I ended up here. But it was all, I mean, everything just kind of happened by chance. Something came up and it just
Don't sell yourself short.
Thank you.
But I guess I'll say sort of how I came about too. I also started at 3M in law school. In one of my legal jobs, and just went to different product liability litigation firms. I don't know if anyone on the panel studied abroad in law school or undergrad, but I studied at the University of, oh, you did? Okay. I studied at the University of College Dublin, and from then I always wanted to come on an international level, and I wanted to be in-house. I actually didn't get my job in Sweden first. I moved to Sweden for a relationship, and then found my job. The relationship didn't work, but I really liked my job. So I thought, well, I'm gonna continue working in-house. I like this. I can always go back to the US if I want to. And I like living in Scandinavia. And so I found a different Swede, and here I am. But I think, I guess I want to highlight one of the sort of indirect ways that I came about this position was because I saw an article written. There's this thing called The Local, and it's a newspaper for different countries. And so there was a woman, a Minnesota lawyer in Sweden, who wrote about her favorite coffee shops in the area. And I thought, a Minnesota lawyer. So, I looked her up. We have since become very close friends. And then through that, just on LinkedIn, how like the algorithm works, I came across another lawyer at Volvo looking for someone who was looking for an assistant. And at that time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in Sweden. And I just emailed the person and I said, hey, this is my background. I'd love to have a conversation with you about being an American lawyer in Europe. And he emailed me right away and was like, let's talk. And when I went in the next day, he was, why are you why are you interviewing for an assistant position? And I just thought, well, you have to start somewhere. And, I didn't go to law school here. And he just ended up saying, well, I have bad news and good news. I can't offer you this position, but I can offer you a legal counsel position, because he needed one. Yeah. And at that time, in Europe, you usually have a 3-month window where you have to give your employer time, and I could start right away. So it was a lot of right place at the right time and skill set. So, LinkedIn can be good.
That's a great story. Echo, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like unique, and thanks Minnesota Law School. So I obtained master's degree, and afterwards I passed the New York bar. So then afterwards, I just went direct back to China, so basically in Shanghai. So I landed a job in one of the US law firms in the Shanghai representative office. So basically, I just wrote email to the partners, because we have more than 200 like US law firms in China. So basically, I just found the partner email and directly wrote to them. So afterwards, I landed a legal consultant job in Kulier Brothers. So the first international law firm practice law in China. So afterwards, I joined where go to Mango's LLP. So basically, I had private practice for around 6 years. So I want to have a work-life balance. So I become an in-house counsel. So basically, it's a bit simple, relatively simple. But thanks Minnesota Law School for the training. It's great training.
We do have one more question. Tim, do we have?
Can I just add one very
Oh,
quick
yeah.
point on that? Yeah, alumni connections, very helpful. Before I came to Japan, I did meet with 2 Minnesota law alum in Tokyo. Didn't result in a job, but it helped me with great advice, and so I could really kind of focus my career and see what I could do. But wanted to plug that.
Vicky, do you want to answer that first question about transitioning from Minnesota law to an in-house?
Sure. So I was reached out by LinkedIn as well. And I always wanted to come back to my home country to work as well. So that I started at Hanwha Sales, and that led to different industries within the manufacturing business. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up at my current job.
So I want to be mindful of time. Tim, we do have one more question. Do you think we have time for?
Yeah, I think we can pose the question and then we just need some quick responses. So because we will close right at the hour. So.
Great. So the question is, working with a wide range of laws as an in-house counsel might keep you busier compared to working in a law firm where you're assigned to a specific area. Like Dan mentioned, how do you manage to develop your skills and knowledge when faced with such an extensive scope of work? Any short answers?
Yeah, I guess you need to really communicate with your departments. They might be a good resource. For example, if you're in the tech business, you want to know the technical information, and you will just communicate with your colleagues about that. And also use newsletters that are sent from law firms to just keep up with the trend, or communicate with other in-house lawyers from the same business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are many ways of having that resource to develop your skills and knowledge as an in-house.
That's great. Well, Tim, I might turn it over to you to say some closing words, so we have a little closure at the end here.
We're great. No, thank you, Carrie. So to all our attendees, thanks so much for your time today, be it your morning, afternoon, or evening. We appreciate the support of alumni to participate and learn from your fellow alums who offered some fantastic insights in articulating their experiences for everyone today. So to our panelists, again, Cassie from Sweden, Vicky in South Korea, Echo in China, and Dan in Japan. Thank you so much for your time today and always. And Kiri, thanks for moderating such a fantastic panel this morning. Appreciate you getting up and joining us. And Lizzie, to you in the Office of Advancement, thanks so much. I'll close by saying, on behalf of Dean Jenkins and the law school and myself here at the University of Minnesota Foundation, thanks to everyone for your support of the U and the law school, and wish everyone has a great spring season. Take care, and thanks again for your time today.